Hey everybody, I'm Darwin's Eyeball. I just want to make a quick video today where I take a debate I see going on in the No Man's Sky community. I take one side of that debate. I try to throw shade at the other side, try and beat up on the other side, all in good fun, all just to stimulate discussion. Despite what my tone might be during this video, I don't really dislike anyone who disagrees with me. but yeah, so today's debate is going to be is No Man's Sky Beyond worthy of the label No Man's Sky 2.0? And I've seen a lot of people questioning this lately. I've seen people on Reddit, people on YouTube, people on Twitter, including some pretty big YouTubers like MZK, Procedural Traveler, questioning the label 2.0, saying, there wasn't enough with Beyond to justify the 2.0. I'm going to take the other side of this. I'm going to take the side that's probably right now appears to be the minority position and say, yes, it is. It is definitely worthy of the label 2.0. And to argue this, I'm going to do this in two parts. First, I want to make just a general point of how we're going to assess generational changes. And then secondly, talk about the merits of Beyond on their own, because I think there's a lot of merits to the Beyond, and people that hate on it, there's just too much hate. It's making me sad because I'm really digging Beyond. Okay, so let's start with the general comment. I want to point out that when you're assessing the differences between generations, you have to assess 1.0 versus 2.0, right? What has changed in that generation? You can't just take Beyond and the things that happened in Beyond. You have to see what has been Beyond is only the accumulation of all of the changes that have happened, right? I don't think any one update ever would be enough to justify a label change if you're only considering one update. Even Next wasn't a generational change. But to go from 1.0 to 2.0, you have to consider everything that's happened since release. So all of the things that have happened since release. You're telling me at this point, the game today isn't fundamentally different than the game post-release, right? Right after release. Think of all of the things we've gotten since release, right? We've gotten base building. We've gotten fleets. We've gotten underwater environments. We've gotten land vehicles. We've gotten NPCs that actually move around and do stuff. We've gotten space stations. We've gotten a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, not to mention VR, not to mention multiplayer. There's so many things that have been added to this game. Variation. And I know this is up to a lot of people harp on variation, but if you're talking variation post-release, like immediately after release, the variation now, there's been a significant change. We've gotten farming. We've gotten so many things. So many things have happened from 1.0 to 2.0. At some point, we have to make a decision as a community and accept, okay, enough's enough. This is 2.0. And I think we've hit that point. There's been so many fundamental changes to the gameplay, so many fundamental enhancements of the gameplay, that it's just at some point we have to say, okay, we're finally arrived. And I think that moment is now. Beyond is that moment. There's still people I know. So part of the reason that people are skeptical is, okay, variation hasn't been enhanced enough, or I still don't have my ship customization, or I don't have questing, or I don't have loot, I don't have this, I don't have that. Bruh. The problem with this argument, I think, is that the thing about No Man's Sky is it's a game with unlimited potential. Almost unlimited potential. I mean, you have a freaking universe to do, that's a universal sandbox. So of course, if you're assessing it versus its ultimate potential, it's always going to fall short because that potential is almost unlimited. So if you're saying, what is this game missing? Well, so many things could always be added to this game because, it's a universal sandbox. But if you look at how much this game has changed relative to other games between generations, there's no comparison. There's been so many things added to this game that it's just so much different. Like, I don't even want to go into that argument. There's been enough, I think, material added since release to justify the label at this point. Beyond is just kind of the icing on the cake, but I'm going to say that icing's delicious. And I'm going to say, like, people hating on Beyond, you got to stop hating because there's a lot of great things here. So what is so great about Beyond? Let's talk about Component 3 last because Component 3 is the most controversial. Component 1. Actually, I'm going to do Component 2 because it's the easiest. Component 2, VR. If you don't like VR, I'm sorry. You can't get everything you want in every single update. And I'm going to say VR, for a lot of people, is a revolution. For me, it's a revolution. You know how many minutes I played of this game outside of VR since Beyond dropped? Approximately 4, because I found a Diplo, a unicorn Diplo that I want to get a picture of. So you can't take pictures in VR. So I jumped out of VR to take a picture of my unicorn Diplo and then got back into VR. VR for me is a revolution. I'm part of like a lot of VR communities and people there are loving it. I've talked to a lot of people who play VR and they are loving it. So if you don't love VR, I'm sorry, brah. I don't know why I keep saying that, but like for everyone else, for a lot of people, this is a revolution, and it's going to bring a lot of people into the game. It's going to build a lot of hype for the game, and it's just a good thing. So you can, I know some people are like, okay, it's overly blurry on PlayStation. Yes, it is pretty blurry. I'm not going to lie, it's kind of blurry, but PC VRs are already getting patched to hell, so it's going to look great. It's going to work, function, and do everything great. Like in 2 more weeks, everything will be, all the bugs there will be worked out. When it comes to console VR, it's still fun even if it's blurry. Like I lived 2 years of my life without glasses, and my life was still fun. Just because it was a little bit blurry. But besides that, I really think we're getting a pro patch at some point. So like, it's a little bit too early to assess the VR on those grounds, and you shouldn't, because you should still play. Even if you find it overly blurry at first, still play it because it's amazing and it's worth your time. Okay. Leaving that aside, and leaving aside that this is like a major innovation, like for VR, this is like mind-blowing. Like a lot of people in the VR community did not think a game this big and this complex could be ported into VR and could be ported so silky smooth and with so much multiplayer that like that's a revolution in technology, even if you don't care about VR. So I think Hello Games deserves a whole lot of praise for that initiative. Now let's talk multiplayer. A lot of people are like, okay, the multiplayer is not even that much different. You know, the missions are the same. You know, slightly bigger lobbies. Disappointment. You got to give it time. I really strongly believe that people are assessing the multiplayer of this game too quickly. What I think of the Nexus like is, I think that Hello Games gave us like a toolbox. They gave us a mechanism by which the community could use to develop a whole bunch of awesome things. But we need time to develop them. If you're like going, how was multiplayer the day before Beyond dropped, and how was multiplayer the day after Beyond dropped, and then making that assessment, that's a wrong assessment, not only because it was broken day one, but like also that the community needs time to like use this toolbox, this new toolbox of the Nexus, to like really build something special. I've been saying this like since I've heard about the Nexus. The main thing, the coolest thing at this point about the Nexus is not the missions and not the missions. The coolest thing is that we can visit other bases. And I think this is like, people underestimate how much this actually fundamentally changes the game. People are going to start to develop bases that are made for very specific things. they're going to develop PvP arenas of all possible varieties. They're going to develop racetracks. They're going to develop games within games. They're going to develop role-playing communities so people can act out their like genocidal Gek fantasies. All of these things are going to happen, but the community needs time to develop them, right? Right now, everyone, like before, almost everyone before Beyond had these like multi-purpose bases that were just like general survival bases. Now, we have the opportunity to develop really cool bases for very specific things, but we need time. So you can't assess multiplayer yet, but it is revolutionary, and we just gotta wait to see how big. Okay, finally, let's talk about Component 3. People are hating on Component 3 because it didn't bring that much variety, although I would argue it did, or that it didn't bring ship customization, although in some ways it did. But nonetheless, I think let's talk about the variety issue first. Yes, we didn't get like Ray Rod style overhaul. I understand that. Yes, the flora is more or less the same. Yes, the fauna is kind of more or less the same. At least the faunas and models are more or less the same. But I really think the fauna AI got a big bump, and I'm really liking the fauna and the new fauna AI. The various way things attack you is really cool. I like being attacked now. I find it a lot more interesting. The bigger herds are a lot more like interesting to see. So I think the fauna models didn't get that much of variety overhaul, but like the behavior did, and in some ways that increases variety. But listen, the color schemes definitely got a variety overall. And I know this is maybe the easiest change Hello Games could have made, but I really genuinely believe it makes a big difference. And I think the clearest place you can see this is in like radioactive biomes and in toxic biomes, right? Radioactive biomes before were just like red. Like all I remember them being is like red. Post next, everywhere just red. You go to a radioactive planet, they're red, right? Now I've seen radioactive planets of like browns and purples and yellows and oranges and reds, but with variety, different color skies and more interesting variations in terrain. And these genuinely make the planets feel more varied. So I really think, okay, we didn't get a variety overhaul on scale of Ray Rod, but we still got a lot of cool things. Now, the other thing is like the power and the logic mechanisms, and a lot of people are like questioning this, and like it's hard, makes base building harder. But again, we need more time to learn how to use these things. When Redstone was introduced to Minecraft, it did not change the game overnight. People had to learn how to use it properly. People will learn how to use this, and they'll be able to introduce logic in a lot of crazy ways that I can't even begin to think about. And then not only that, the NPCs are a lot cooler. They attack you. I love that new discovery menu. I'm loving Component 3. I don't like the hate. So, yes, Beyond is worthy of the label. No Man's Sky 2.0, and I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to end this abruptly.